Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Couch. I'm an independent promoter with the company Prove It. And I don't know if it's as hard for you to believe as it is for me, but we are on day 79 of our 90-day run leading into Hacking Better. And you know what that means? It's next freaking weekend. Like, holy cow. I think that I just put end of October so far off in my brain that the fact that it's next week, and I was talking through plans for the kids and how we were going to coordinate all of that, because, you know, we always talk about going into events, how if something can come up to try to make you not go, it will, right? And so my brother, who lives in Indiana, needs my parents to watch the kids. And so they are literally getting back Thursday night before we go to Hacking Better at like maybe midnight or 1 a.m. and I am getting up to leave at 4 a.m. to go to Hacking Better. So it's all going to work out, and I'm super excited. And we're just all manifesting. No running out of gas, no flat tires, nothing, right? It's all going to go seamless. So I'm excited for next week, really excited. I'm as excited for you guys as I am for myself. Like, we're all going to take so much out of this. Second of all, who's mid-reboot right now? I am. I have my broth, and I made a mistake, y'all. Like, salted caramels is not my favorite one. I don't mind it, but it's not my favorite. And usually I save my favorites for day 2. But today I opened it and I was like, oh, good, French onion. I dumped it in, and then I was like, I didn't even check the path. Like, it may be salted caramel from here on out, but it's good. I always feel great after the reboots. I needed this one big time. I was feeling great after the last one, and then, like I'm going to talk about today, you know, you fall into these other old patterns of what you used to do, and I got out of it, and so now I'm back doing movement and rebooting, and I'm feeling really good. So, topic today, I want to teach on the power to choose, and my outcome is to help you to realize and help you to see how to choose how you feel in a given situation. And I can 100% say I'm not fully there. And when I was listening to this today to get ready for it, I was like, man, if I put this into practice, I did. When I heard it the very first time trained by someone, I was like, wow, that is insanely powerful. And I started to do it. And then, you know, you have to keep it. You have to keep doing it. So what I really want to focus on is when we get off here, that we're super intentional about it. And so gratitude, I want us all to put in the comments something that you're grateful for that hasn't happened yet. So we're going to switch it up here. And I think, you know, as we've been goal setting and doing these calls to action, you know, if you're writing your goals and you can write them out, like, I'm so happy and grateful that my parents got home early and I was well rested for my trip to Hacking Better. I'm so happy and grateful that whatever you want to write out. And so today, it's our Happy Monday huddle. I'm going to dig right in. I am going to get under 20 minutes at one of these huddles. But today I want to see big smiles. Even if you don't feel it, you can trick your brain and you can change your brain waves. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So before we start, I want you to think about, or I want you to write down, if you have a pen and paper, I choose this statement: I choose to feel blank rather than blank. And if you kind of close your eyes and think about your brain and kind of the neural pathways that are created when you feel something. It's kind of like, I kind of think of it as like a river or a stream or like a water basin when you have these feelings. And, you know, who has said before, and I am as guilty as anyone of falling back into old patterns, and I have to keep recognizing myself, and that's all part of growth, right? But I think who said, I don't know why I always do blank. For example, I have some success and I always sabotage myself. Right? Who else has been there? Like, there are things that get us to our goals and there are things that don't, right? And so I want you to recognize that if you do this and you learn this, you'll kind of have a superpower, right? You'll have the ability to control and to choose your emotions. And like, when I first started hearing this and how important this was, you know, I think a lot of times we get all caught up in technique and not enough mindset. But if we're not getting into that mindset stuff, we're not even going to get to the technique. We're going to be tanking every time someone does anything, not even just in our Prove It business, anytime at work, anytime at home, anytime our kids are cranky, our spouses are cranky, we're cranky, like, you name it, we're taking ourselves out of the game. We've got to learn to control these emotions, right? And so instead, your superpower is, I choose to feel blank rather than blank. And so what are some of these negative emotions we feel a lot or take over. And you can put them in the comments if you want, but you know, ones that come to mind: anxiety or depression, stress, fear, that you're stuck, disempowerment, loneliness, disappointment, overwhelm, right? We feel that like anxiety creeps in for me if I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to be doing, if I haven't spent time with my kids, all the things, if I'm not doing all the things, right, that can creep in. But we have to recognize that these are patterns that are on autopilot in your brain. So if you think of this river, this narrow pathway, right? And then it's making its way, and then it's dried up. Like it's there. You've set your brain on autopilot. That's your reaction when a trigger situation happens, right? They're your go-to pathways. They're your go-to patterns. And I think our most underused power is our power to choose and to change these. And today I want to give you tools and things to do, and I'm going to be sipping on my broth throughout this, and I'm sorry, but it's day one. I don't want to be hungry because I don't want to even think about that right now. But today I want to give you tools and things to do to change these patterns and change these emotions. And it's nothing that everyone can't do. Everyone can do this. We just need to be reminded of it, or remind ourselves of it over and over. And Christy Jones and I were just talking about this at an event on Saturday, how we think like maybe, like her Zoom on Sunday, we say 2020, and then you get this thing and you're like, okay, I got to go. It's time to go because something's coming in 2020. Like that triggers something for us. So if we can put these reminders around our house, like I choose to feel blank instead of blank. If you're putting that around, you're reminding yourself, it takes that time. So last week I gave you ways to plan on Monday, ways to plan what to get done for the week on Mondays. But if you are feeling these negative emotions, that can be hard. That can be hard to move into that or to move away from what you're feeling, right? But if we can pivot, we can create, right? If we can pivot, we can create. So if we can wake up, shift how we're feeling about whatever. So say you wake up like, I don't even know, it's freezing in your house and that makes you feel anxious. You haven't gotten up on time, XYZ. It can be hard to then pivot into what we need to do for the week, right? But if we could shift that as soon as we woke up, I choose to feel blank instead of blank. There we go, right? We're choosing how we feel. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So now let's switch to the positives. What are some emotions we would want to create in place of fear or anxiety or overwhelm or disempowerment, right? Like things like mine, I would choose, like when I did this training with someone else, I chose joy, right? I choose joy over anxiety. Or you could say abundance or love or success, fearless, proud, blissful, I don't know, aligned, focused, connected, whatever it is for you. And what I want you to do is pick 2 words, one from each of those, one negative and one positive. And I want you to fill in that statement. Mine would be, I choose to feel joy instead of anger, or I choose to feel joy instead of sadness, right? And so then I want you to pick 5 that you really want to feel. And if you're like, oh, I'm not really sure which ones, then I think that's a realization for you that you've been letting the negative take over, right? If you can't think of 5 positive, awesome emotions that you want to feel all the time, then let's really dig in here, right? Your consciousness of these patterns or of the things that trigger the negative matters. And this shift matters, right? So for example, when I argue with Nick over something little or something big, I get mean. My go-to pattern is mean. And I say things and then I'm like, I didn't want to do that. And then I'm like, okay, the next time we argue, I'm not going to do that. Like, Jesus would not want me to act like that. He would want me to respect my husband and not say mean things. And then here it comes again, trigger pattern, act mean again. It's like, what are we doing? Like I need to be, if I really want this change, then, I believe that I need to pray about that. And then I need to start shifting this emotion, right? Another example, when my kids don't yell, and I have shifted this and it is going well. My old pattern would be to scream. I was a yeller. Like I would tell them, boom, I'm over the edge. I'm screaming at them, right? The reason is because there's a reward, right? Or there's a physical response that we get from this when it happens. So for example, if I yell at my kids, then it produces an outcome. I get what I want them to do because I've lost my cool. They're like freaking out and they do it, right? But is that really the situation that I want to create, right? Or like, let's look at our business. Someone says to you, I'm having trouble selling 5 and 10 days. What's triggered? Like in your brain or their brain, is that triggering excitement or joy or confidence? No, right? It's not. It's triggering anxiety and frustration and self-doubt, right? And so the payoff of that pattern in the person that you're talking to is protection. They're going to stop when you start to dig in with them. A lot of times they're going to stop texting back because it'll protect us from what we need to do, right? The work that we need to put in. And I think sometimes as humans, we fall back on like laziness in the not mean way, right? Like laziness happens and we all do it. And so I think we fall back on that when we get scared, right? I think a lot of this stuff we talked about over the 90-day run, it takes work and it takes practice and it takes putting in the time. But you know, the payoff of the pattern of saying, I can't do this and going back into that self-doubt is that we protect ourselves and we fall back into that. So we hit these emotions and we protect and we shut down, right? And we may be messaging our coach or our mentor like, hey, I'm ready to go, but we're subconsciously putting up these huge walls around us, right? We're like, nope, I'm not doing this. I can't do it. I quit. I can never do this. I should have never started in the beginning. Like, do you hear that kind of talk? If I have that talk going in my brain all the time, where am I going to get myself? Like, if I'm trying to go, my goal is all the way out here and I'm in my head like, well, dang, I can't even sell a 5-day today. And they're on there talking. It's like, let's stop this pattern language and learn to shift it, right? So these patterns, they grow and they run our entire lives, right? Creating good patterns and bad patterns and habits in our brain. And when we become conscious to it, then we can change it, right? So number one, what should we do? We should be identifying patterns that don't serve us. So we all have good patterns, like the things we do well to raise our children. We get up, we wake them up, we feed them, we get them dressed, we teach them how to brush their teeth and do all this stuff, right? Good pattern. If we want to be healthy, we go to the gym, we eat correctly. Those are good patterns in your brain, right? But I want you to identify patterns that aren't serving you, right? Like, is it bad patterns in your relationships? And then that's moving into your business, right? Maybe when people try to get close, you shut down and turn them away, right? Because you're afraid you're not good enough or something like that. That's a pattern that's not serving you, right? And I think it's because somewhere in there, we've got to make a shift. We've got to ID it first, though. If we can't change it if we can't put our hand on what it is. So write down and think about, what is that for you? Second, I want you to identify, what do you kick into automatically? Like I said in my example, when I argue with Nick, I kick into mean. I kick into defensive. I kick into I'm right and he's wrong and I don't want to hear it. And so then I just say what I had to say louder and meaner and uglier until he gets my point. And that should not be a pattern in my marriage, right? And so if I think I want to feel joy instead of anger, how would I respond differently in that argument or in that discussion, right? It might not even get to be an argument if I would just keep my cool, if I would choose joy. And so now I want you to ID what you want to feel instead, right? So I said, for me, that's joy. So if I'm intentional about feeling joy over anger, regardless of the experience that we have in our disagreement, like we might still have that disagreement. We're going to still have these experiences in our marriage. But if I keep saying, I want to feel joy, I don't want to feel upset, I don't want to feel mean, I don't want to feel angry, because what happens out of that, right? I don't want to feel guilty. I don't want to feel disappointed after. Like it's a pattern here. All of a sudden, I'm aware. And so when I start to act mean, I can say, oh, stop. This is just a pattern, right? Because I know, because I'm aware now, that I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel this. I want to feel joy. And so we can shift once we're aware and we say, this is a pattern. Like Nick maybe will say, you all know that Nick is way more spontaneous than I am, right? So a last minute 6-day trip to Alaska, trigger, right? Like trigger, and he's there, right? So if I can get angry and I can say, why would you want to go to Alaska away from your family? I can say, no, this is a pattern. This is a pattern of feeling mean. I choose to feel joy instead of anger, right? I might not be happy about it right in the moment, but if I'm making choices and pattern language and making those new waves in my brain, I can choose my reactions a little bit differently, and that will get better over time, right? We are not our patterns. We are not our patterns. We can shift those, right? You've heard a lot, you are the habits that you do, right? You are what you consistently do, but these things in our brain, they can be changed. And it's just a matter of being a brain function, right? So now I want you to Now we can choose to act with the things that will create new patterns, right? Kindness, empathy, understanding, right? But we have this awareness now. And I think that is half the battle, is being able to stop and be in that aware moment, because it can be hard. When these things trigger these negative patterns, it's easy. It is easy to go down there, right? Like, a perfect example, Nick is 4 hours behind in Alaska, and they're busy, right? But I needed some answers on some things so I could move. The kids were in bed, I was ready to do work, and I didn't hear back from him. So what does that trigger? Like, oh, I'll never get the answers I need. I can't even do work tonight because I don't have this, that. Like, I didn't need to do that exact thing. There's plenty of other things to do. But if I can say, stop, I choose to feel joy instead of anxiety, right? How would I'd say, okay, that's fine. I'll get to that step later. I'm going to go whatever else. I'm going to go snuggle my kids. I'm going to go do work. I'm going to go read the Bible. I'm going to do whatever I want to do, right? So becoming aware. So in our business, our self-limiting beliefs that we feel are being confirmed, that's the reward. Like, when our self-limiting beliefs are confirmed in our head, you know, we're talking about rewards, and that's why you do these pattern behaviors, because there's an outcome, right? And in our business, the confirming of these self-limiting beliefs is the reward, right? Reward. So what we think we deserve is what we have in our lives, right? Like, when I first heard that, I was like, oh, dang, that's really deep, right? Like, if I think about that, if I'm like, man, I don't know, she's probably ranked whatever because she does this and this, I probably don't deserve that anyhow because I haven't done it. That's a thing, right? That's what I have in my life because that's what I'm telling myself all the time. It becomes things, right? And it's a direct reflection in everything, like our bodies, our relationships, our finances, everything we're doing is a direct reflection of what we're telling ourselves up here. And so when we argue or we fail or we screw up our nutrition, it confirms this limiting belief that we have about ourselves. And so we get deeper and deeper in this pattern until that river's dried up in your brain and you're like, I can't do this. I can't do this because every time I try a diet, I fail. Every time I try a business, I quit. Every time, right? We're ingraining that in our brain. If we're like, stop, I choose to feel empowered instead of like a failure. How much different would you go into the next actions, right? If you're like, I choose to feel like a champion instead of feeling anxious, right? Like we can do this. And you can be addicted to the pain and the suffering chemically, right? The same way as you can do it to success. So what if we decided consciously to change it up? Like, what if we just were like, this is not how I'm going to choose to operate anymore. I'm going to change it up and I can do this, right? So what if we said, I'm going to choose whatever you chose, whatever your 5 positive ones were. What if you said, I'm trying to find them in my notes. What if I'm going to choose joy, love, abundance, being aligned and being focused over the anxiety, fear, and depression. And then we reevaluate to create new patterns in our head. That would be pretty empowering if we could actually do that, right? And it's those simple daily little decisions, simple daily, simple, right? So know how to identify this, right? If it's happened more than once, it's probably a pattern, right? Like, let's make new ones. For example, you say, I don't know why when I start to have some success, I stop showing up. That's probably a pattern, right? I don't know why when I feel good about my body, I stop eating right and working out. That's me. That's my pattern, right? I do that. And so instead, like, I choose to feel healthy instead of feeling depressed about how I was feeling or how about my body, whatever your thing is, right? So now I want to walk through 3 things that we want to do this. Number 1, the first thing you want to think, what are you doing to create more of that first emotion? So joy. What am I doing to create more joy? If it's for me, self-care, is it waking up early and knocking out all the stuff that I want to get done before the kids get up? Is it Bible time or prayer? Is it working out, right? These things seem little, but they're big things. They're big choices. It's these choices that are going to get you to that mindset because you're taking the steps towards joy, right? Like, that makes me feel happy when I'm like, I'm going for that, right? So make it personal about you. And when you start to bring in more of that feeling, what else does it bring in? It brings in more love. It brings in more happiness, more gratitude, more better relationships, more success, right? We talked about on Zoom. I finally got them all uploaded onto the channel, so I was watching them as I was going. But we talked about before about being open to those opportunities, right? It's like you're running down that football field And all of a sudden you're turning and you're open. You're ready for that ball, right? Instead of running down the field, not even looking. Same thing here, right? When we're opening these new pathways, we're ready for joy. We're ready for love because we're aware now that we were closed off to that in our old pattern. In the past, in that old pattern, we were closed off, but we're not anymore, right? And I think all of these things come down to creating the emotional state we want. And so how empowering would it feel to be able to, we walked through a exercise with Joseph McClendon at one event, and it was the stop technique. I think I've talked about this before. And he wanted you to go to this darkest place, like when you were really at your worst emotionally, and then he taught you how to stop and shift it and get out of that state quickly. And I have used that ever since then to just get out of it. Like, what dwelling in that spot is not good. It's not going to do you any good. It's definitely not going to do your business any good or your life. So let's get out of it. Like, I choose joy instead of anger. I choose joy instead of anxiety, right? The second thing, what are you doing to create more of that feeling in other people, right? More joy in my life, and what am I doing to create more joy in others? Because the more experiences of that kind of emotion that we're creating in others, what's that going to bring back to us, right? When we open our eyes to this and these old patterns, they no longer stop us, right? It takes the power away from these patterns and gives us the choice. So if I'm putting joy out, I'm creating joy in the people around me. What do you think I'm surrounding myself with? What kind of pathways do you think I'm creating up here? Joy, right? Joy, whatever your word is. Okay, so number 3, how joyful, or whatever your word is, how joyful are you to be around? So when people are around you, do they feel joy? Do they feel empowerment? Do they feel brave and courageous? Do they feel this vibration of love from you? And I think that this takes a lot of self-awareness to do this. You guys can make this shift, but when I listened to these questions, I was like, man, I don't know. Like, I think of myself as a happy person, but like the people that come in contact with me every single day, are they feeling that from me? Or do I, like, I'm creating it in here, right? I'm making the shift in my own head, but am I creating it in the world around me, right? And so I want you to think, are you that to be around? And so your call to action, I want you to move into the week more intentionally. I want you to identify your patterns. It's basically the last 3 walk to. Identify your patterns and then walk through those last 3 with this new awareness. Do the shift. Like, even if you have to do it out loud and the person that you're with didn't watch this Zoom and they think you're really weird, just call me afterwards. We can debrief, but be like, stop. I choose joy. I choose love. I choose positivity. And then see how it goes. I'm anxious to see how, when you guys start to make this shift over the next 2 weeks, leading into Hacking Better, all the more mindset growth that we're all going to get there. So I am excited to see you guys today. I'm excited that it's Monday. I'm excited next week is Hacking Better. I'm excited that we're already, 16 hours into the reboot. So have a great week, you guys, and we will see you tomorrow.